The 53-man roster has officially dropped.
And you tell them one thing. Just win, baby.
It's because you're not feeling Uzi.
What is good, Raider Nation? It's your boy Samora Raider back at it again with another video. Like I said earlier, the 53-man roster has officially dropped. We finally see who makes the roster and who didn't make the cut and who makes the practice squad and so on and so forth. A lot of moves have been made in the past couple of hours and just the past couple of days. And I'm going to go over all of that, starting with Neil Farrell being sent over to Kansas City for a 6th round pick. Now, this is one of the more surprising moves for me, that the Raiders will move on from Neil Farrell just after drafting him last year in the 4th round. Maybe he did get outplayed in the preseason, but you know, this is a second-year player, you know what I mean? And we've gotten a lot of gems in the 4th round, 5th round, 6th round, so on and so forth. So to see the Raiders give up on him, I guess the players that we have on the roster right now are doing better than him, I guess. At the end of the day, I wish nothing but the best for Neil Farrell and his future endeavors with the Kansas City Chiefs. Not only that, the Raiders just made a move not too long ago, signing wide receiver Marquez Callaway per Jeremy Fowler. He tweeted out, free agent wide receiver Marquez Callaway will be signing with the Raiders practice squad per source. Waived by Denver this week, Callaway had 1,069 yards and 7 touchdowns with the New Orleans Saints in 2020. So a solid addition to the practice squad. Not expecting much out of him, but he is a name that a lot of people are familiar with, especially, you know, with the New Orleans Saints. Now, I want to get to the 53-man roster. The Raiders made a lot of cuts, and there was a couple of surprises that I seen, and some players that we all knew weren't really going to make the roster. Now, the first wave of cuts that happened, I believe, on Monday night, the Raiders released Isaac Darkangelo, Ike Brown, Doug Costin, Bryce Cosby, quarterback Chase Garbers, Vitaly Gurman, Darwin Thompson, and Chris Lacey. Now, Brenton Brown, Jacob Hollister, and Isaiah Zuber were all placed on the IR, ending their seasons. Now, the Raiders would go on and waive David Goa, Matthew Butler, McClendon Curtis, Cole Fotheringham, safety Jaden Grant, Tyler Hall, Azizi Hearn, Kanai Maunga, Sincere McCormick, Natani Moody, Adam Plant, tight end John Shanker, George Tarles, Drake Thomas, and Sam Webb. They would also go on and release Alex Barr, Keelan Cole, Philip Dorsett, Haranas Grasu, Jaquan Johnson, Isaac Rochelle, Duke Shelley, Cam Sims, Damon Williams, and Jordan Willis, while also adding Dalton Wagner to the reserved/IR list. Now, that's a lot of players that the Raiders have released in just the past couple of hours. Now, some surprising cuts for me. One was Matthew Butler. We just drafted him in the 5th round, like I said earlier, with Neil Farrell. It's crazy that the Raiders are moving on from 2 players that we just drafted just a year ago, 4th and 5th round picks. In a position of need, the Raiders have struggled with the defensive tackle position, which kind of begs the question why they moved on so quickly. Why didn't they draft the defensive tackle early on in this past draft that we just had? There was a lot of great defensive tackles out there. McClendon Curtis was also another surprising name for me at first. He did a great job during the offseason, was a standout out there. I know that he ended up making the practice squad. Jaden Grant also made the practice squad. Natani Moody made the practice squad. You know, I was kind of surprised at first that Moody was off the list, but it's great that the Raiders were able to keep him around, at least for now. Now, some other names that did surprise me: one, Adam Plant Jr. and Drake Thomas. Now, Drake Thomas was a guy that I thought was going to make the roster. He did a solid job throughout the preseason. He wore the green dot. He was the leader on the defensive side of the ball. The past 2 games, he was the leading tackler for the Raiders. So I thought, with the Raiders really struggling to have any depth at the linebacker position, that he would have made the roster. But maybe the Raiders are waiting for some more moves. Maybe they're waiting to go and claim some other players out there. But those 2 positions, the defensive line and the linebacker position, have not been addressed, which is something that is really frustrating with me, because linebacker definitely has been a position that we've all been pounding the table for. And after letting go of Denzel Perman, who has been our best linebacker in the past couple of years, we let him walk, or I believe we traded him. I forgot what happened. But, you know, we don't have a lot of depth at the linebacker position. We have Divine Diablo. We still got Luke Masterson. I know we signed Robert Spillane, but we still need players there at the line. We don't have nobody that stands out, I would say, at that position. So to cut a guy like Drake Thomas off the list that I seen from the practice squad, he's not even on there as well. We'll see what happens in the next couple of days. I do believe that we have a couple more spots on the practice squad, and since we're talking about the practice squad, I might as well announce the 14 players that made the practice squad. Now, the Raiders can actually have up to 17 players because David Agoa made the practice squad and he was a part of the IPP program, so he does not account for a roster spot, which is great for him. He comes over here here could still learn and he could still be a part of the roster. But outside of David Agawa, we brought back Matthew Butler, Sam Webb, Tyler Hall, Natani Moody, Sincere McCormick, Jaden Grant, McClendon Curtis, Cole Fotheringham, John Samuel Shanker, Kanai Maunga, Isaac Rochelle, Devin Ross, and Antoine Wesley. Now, obviously, it was great that the Raiders were able to bring back Matthew Butler, Natani Moody, McClendon Curtis, Cole Fotheringham, who stood out to me in preseason as well, and Isaac Rochelle. So as of right now, those are the names on the practice squad. Hopefully, they could find a way to bring Drake Thomas back because I think he's still got a lot of juice in him. Also, I forgot to mention that Marquez Callaway was a part of the practice squad as well. Now, moving on to the final 53-man roster, we're going to go over the full roster as far as right now. I'm going to give you guys my opinions on most of the players that made the team. Now, starting with the offensive side of the ball, at quarterback, we have 3 quarterbacks. So most teams go with 2 quarterbacks, but I was pretty sure that we're going to go with 3. We have Jimmy Garoppolo, Brian Hoyer, and Aiden O'Connell. I feel like the Raiders still kept Brian Hoyer on the roster basically to be a coach for Aiden O'Connell. I've said that many times, and I feel like that's the right move for the Raiders because if there's anybody that knows this offense in and out, is definitely Brian Hoyer. Now, as far as the running backs, it's great that we have Josh Jacobs back on the roster. And joining him is Zamir White, Amir Abdullah, and Brandon Bolden. I still don't know why Brandon Bolden is a part of this team, but I'm pretty sure because he has a relationship with our coach in this new regime. That's the main reason why he's still on this roster. He hasn't done nothing significant for us since he's been a part of this team, which is surprising to me. At least Amir Abdullah provides something in the return game, you know what I mean? Now, looking at the fullback position, of course, Jakob Johnson, the only fullback that we have right now. Looking at the wide receiver positions, obviously we have Devontae Adams, the best wide receiver in the NFL. DeAndre Carter makes the roster, Jacoby Myers, Hunter Renfrow, Trey Tucker, and surprisingly, Christian Wilkerson. Now, I know I wanted to drop a 53-man roster prediction, but I wasn't able to do that on Monday. But Christian Wilkerson was one guy that really stood out to me in the preseason, especially with his rapport with Aiden O'Connell. Not only that, you know, his history with the Patriots, I felt like would have given him the edge to make the roster, and he did. He beat out guys like Cam Sims, Philip Dorsett, and even Keelan Cole to make this roster spot. So shout out to Christian Wilkerson for making the final 53, man. And he's a guy that's worked his way up the roster, and it's good to see that that hard work definitely does pay off. Now, as far as the tight end positions, we have Michael Mayer, Austin Hooper, and Jesper Horsted. Again, I'm expecting Michael Mayer to stand out this year, be one of the top tight ends in the league, especially as a rookie, because I think he has all the tools to be a great tight end in this league. And knowing a guy like, you know, Jimmy Garoppolo, who really relies on his tight end a lot, I think he's going to have a big year this year, especially in the red zone. Now, moving on to the offensive line, we have Jermaine Illuminor returning. We got Justin Herron, Andre James, Colton Miller, Jordan Meredith, Thayer Munford, Dylan Parham, and Greg Van Roten. Now, names that really stand out on the offensive line is Jordan Meredith and Greg Van Roten. You know, they definitely worked their way up the roster. And, you know, for guys like Alex Bars, who was on the team, he basically lost his job to these guys out there. So the offensive line looks solid out there. I'm not too worried about it. I'm glad that we were able to bring back the Natani Moody and McClendon Curtis to have them on the practice squad. If anything was to happen to any of these guys, you know, knock on wood. I also forgot to mention, as far as the running backs, I was really surprised that Damon Williams wasn't able to make the roster. From what I've seen from him in that last game, kind of proved to me everything that I needed to know from Damon Williams. He was a solid back, and he looked like the best back that we had all preseason. More than Zamir White, more than Brandon Bolden, more than Amir Abdullah. I felt like, you know, as a veteran, Damon Williams should have made a roster spot, but I know that the Raiders are tied in with Zamir White with that 3rd round pick or 4th round pick last year, and Brandon Bolden and Amir Abdullah just, I guess, our favorites with this new regime. But that's one name that I did want to bring up. Now, looking at the defensive side of the ball, on the defensive line, Adam Butler, man. Shout out to Adam Butler, man. Making the roster, one guy that I didn't really know about going into the season, but in the preseason, he really showed out, especially in that Niner game. You know, he brought a lot of pressure to the quarterback. So, I mean, it's great to see that he made the roster. Now, Max Crosby, the Condor, obviously was going to be on the roster. Nesta J. Silvera, rookie, coming in, showing out in preseason, has been a favorite for a lot of these other players and coaches. So again, another player that's good to see on the roster right now. John Jenkins is there, Chandler Jones, Malcolm Kuntz, Bilal Nichols, Jerry Tillery, Byron Young, and Tyree Wilson. I would say a solid defensive line could be better. I feel like the defensive tackle position is a little bit weak still. We got some guys here that are some dogs and are definitely working their way up. We'll see how the defense looks. But as far as right now on paper, I feel like the Raiders still need a little bit of juice at that defensive tackle position. I really wish that we could have drafted somebody high in the draft this year. I know a lot of people, including me, really wanted the Raiders to get Jalen Carter, but after all the mistakes that he made, obviously off the field, we didn't want to take a chance on him. But there was also a lot of other defensive tackles I feel like we could have went out and got. Now, a position that I feel like has been lacking for the Raiders, and I've alliterated to this earlier in the video, it has been the linebacker position. But the guys that are on the roster right now is Robert Spillane, Divine Diablo, Luke Masterson, Amari Burney, and Curtis Bolton. I still feel like Drake Thomas should have made this list. Luke Masterson has looked solid, is not a standout though. Divine Diablo most likely could be our best linebacker this year with Robert Spillane. I know we didn't really see a lot of Spillane, but he looked explosive from what we've seen. But this linebacker group does not stand out, does not jump out and say, yo, this is a dominant linebacker group. I still feel like we could go out and address this position. Maybe if we can get somebody off of the waiver wire, I don't know, but I just feel like we could still use talent at that position. But also shout out to, Curtis Bolton for making the roster. I just feel like his impact is going to be felt more on special teams. Now moving on to the cornerback group, we have Marcus Peters, Nate Hobbs, Brandon Faison, Jacorian Bennett, David Long Jr., and Amik Robertson. Obviously Marcus Peters, Nate Hobbs are going to make the roster. Jacorian Bennett really showed out. He didn't even play in the last game, which showed you guys that he was going to be a part of the roster for sure. Now after that, it was basically a toss-up. And one name that stood out to a lot of people, and when I talked about who could be a surprise cut from the team, a lot of people brought up the name Amik Robertson. Now, he didn't really look the greatest in that last game against the Cowboys, but I still feel like Amik has a lot to give to this team. I think he was one of our better cornerbacks last year. He made a lot of big plays for us on the defensive side of the ball, so it's good to see that he's still sticking around right now. A lot of people could be surprised by it, and I know Amik kind of was talking this shit out there on social media. There's a lot of people in the media really doubting him, but for him to make the roster is a huge accomplishment for him and, his career. So I'm wishing nothing but the best for him. I hope he could be a solid staple in the secondary for us this season. Now, as far as the safeties, obviously we've got Marcus Epps, Trayvon Merrick, Roderick Teamer, Chris Smith II, and my Isaiah Polamau, who's been getting a lot of love, a lot of credit this year on the defensive side of the ball, especially in the secondary. He's a guy that really showed out in preseason as well, man, having a pick six. I've been telling you guys, if there's somebody that's going to break out this year on the defensive side of the ball, make that big jump, I think Isaiah Polamau could be that guy. What Hufanga was for the Niners last year, I feel like Polamau is going to be for us this year. So it's great to see the Oos make the roster. I might end up buying his jersey. Who knows, man? And last but not least, looking at the special teams, obviously Daniel Carlson as the kicker, AJ Cole as our punter, and long snapper Jacob Bobbin Moyer. And that completes our 53-man roster. Shout out to everybody that made the team. That's going to be our roster as of right now going into week 1 versus the Denver Donkeys. Now, of course, nothing is really set in stone, but we're just going to go off of what the Raiders released just yesterday. Now, moving on, some players that got some new numbers going into this season. Starting off, we got Jacorian Bennett with the number 0, man. I think that's going to be one of the coldest numbers in the NFL, but to see him go out there and rock number 0, be the first Raider in history to rock that number, he better go out there and show out. You know what I mean? And I feel like he's going to be a real big part of our defense, especially in the secondary. He's been getting a lot of love from the coaching staff and a lot of love from his peers. So I'm excited to see him this year. Trey Tucker, another rookie, going to be changing his number from 89 to number 11. Now, he initially did change to number 14, and then just today he changed it to number 11, which I think is a much better number for him. Now, does this hit a little bit close to home? Especially with the former speedy receiver that we had at number 11. You know what I mean? I'm not going to get too much into that, but, Trey Tucker is definitely a guy I'm looking forward to watching this season. Another rookie that changed his number is Chris Smith from number 30 to number 29. Austin Hooper changed his number from 82 to 81. Nessa Jade Silvera, another rookie, changed from 97 to 99. David Long Jr. went from the old Josh Jacobs number 28 to number 23. And Josh Jacobs obviously is rocking that number 8. And reports came out that it costed him $3.5 million to change his number. Maybe that's why he held out for so long, because he wanted to get a little bit more money so he could change his number officially and pay that off. But speaking of Josh Jacobs, we finally got to see Josh Jacobs back at practice rocking that number 8. It's great to see Josh Jacobs back at practice with his peers rocking the silver and black and with a new number, man. New number, who this? You know what I mean? This dude looks crazy out there, and he kind of talked about the significance of that number 8. According to Logan Reaver, he said, "That's the number I've worn all my life. It's a number that brings out something different in me. Something about 8 makes me feel like a superhero for real." Which, I mean, hey, shout out to Josh Jacobs. He went from hero to villain to superhero. So I guess it is what it is, man. I'm just happy that he's on the team and he's out there ready to go for week 1. Some other players that also returned to practice today was defensive end Chandler Jones and guard Dylan Parham. Both missed multiple practices due to injuries, so it's great to see them out there doing their thing ready for week 1. So with that being said, Raider Nation, that is the final 53. I just wanted to go over that with you guys. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are on this. Do you guys feel like the Raiders make the right moves? My only concern about this roster really is on the defensive side of the ball with the defensive tackles in the linebacker room right now. I feel like everything else seems solid, but those are the 2 key positions that the Raiders are really missing, talent at. So you never know, man. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe when we go into the season, these guys are going to show out, but I won't believe it until I see it. I'm sure the Raiders have a lot more moves to be made before the season does start. So when they do, I'll let you guys know, Raider Nation. So again, let me know your thoughts on the final 53 down in the comments below. So with that being said, until the next video, this is your boy, Raider, and your boys, yeah.